Welcome to the Fat Emperor podcast. I'm your host, Ivor Cummins. Hey guys, back to metabolic health and cardiovascular disease prevention, heart attack prevention this morning. And we have Mark Felstead back, who runs We Love Our Heart, the group in Germany, but it's international, bringing together all of the people who have heart attack histories and who want to really eliminate the chance of problems in the future. So great to see you again, Mark.
Hey, Ivor, it's always a pleasure, man. It's always a pleasure.
And your group is growing and it's great to see, promoting calcification scanning, preventative diagnostics, and of course, the diet, lifestyle, and everything else that will fix your problem or make sure it never arises. But I thought we might start with a brief recap of your experience because it was quite traumatic and it's experienced by millions of people around the world. It doesn't get too much news coverage unless a famous person has a heart attack.
Well, funny you should say that, Ivor, because of course, last Saturday, I don't know if you're a big football fan, but Christian Eriksen, there were some very horrible scenes on the TV where he suddenly collapsed from cardiac arrest, sudden cardiac arrest. And, without being too emotional about the whole thing, I was a wreck for half an hour because he brought back so many of the feelings that I had, which obviously, to be honest, I haven't processed fully yet because 2018, I underwent a very similar occasion. Okay, I'm not in my late 20s, but I was at the top of my game. I was very fit. It was during a sporting event, a duathlon, that I collapsed 300 meters for the finish with a sudden cardiac arrest. And thank heavens, two of my competitors who turned out to be doctors, started the whole CPR process with me before the emergency services arrived and shot me with a defibrillator. And that was August 2018. And that was a big shock for me and for my family, obviously, because there were no real previous symptoms before. I was feeling great. I was competing in a sporting event. I was even in one of the leading groups. It wasn't like I was lagged last and struggling. I was doing really well in the event itself. So I was clearly performing quite well. This has all been told to me afterwards, of course. That brought it all back on Saturday, that just how vulnerable certain people are without knowing about it. That's the key thing, Ivor.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the silent killer in so many cases. And, I think 40% approximately of first sudden heart attacks end in death. So it's just incredible. And the numbers are shocking. It's biggest killer in the world. You actually were a couple of weeks in a induced coma, I think.
Oh my God, yeah, Ivor. So I woke up 10 days later from an induced coma. Again, without being totally emotional about it, my sister was on my left-hand side, my wife was on the right-hand side, and I did not have a clue where I was or what had happened to me. I was gone for the whole time. And I've never seen such a big smile on my wife's face before and my sister's face before when I woke up, because that's the terrible thing as well. I mean, apart from the fact that my wife gets the call, your husband's had a heart attack, he's in the emergency services now. We cannot say he's stable now, but we cannot say if he will survive the next 24 hours. That was what they said. And then the next thing is you're in the induced coma and they're doing lots of tests on you. But they still don't know exactly the condition you will be in or until you wake up, or even whether you will wake up. And that's pretty scary too, especially for the family, right? I mean, you are out of it, but for the family, that is pretty damn scary. So when I woke up, they were just so happy that I had woken up, that I still had some of my cognitive abilities, actually slowly but surely all of them again, which is the next thing, of course, that you're worried about. But it's kind of what does it mean, success story, Ivor? I'm still here and still fit and fighting, and but it's something I want to share with other people, my experience, and which started me on a journey, which last year, 18 months ago, I found you and your great work with the Widowmaker and Extra Time movie, and I suddenly was like, oh my God, this is my story. This cannot stop here. This has to be spread. I have to learn. I have to share this with other people. And this is what came to be the basis of We Love Our Heart, which, as you say, is now growing up. Let's talk about that in a minute. But I just want to, that's the recap of the situation. Today, I feel great and a good reason to.
Excellent, Mark. It's phenomenal. And yeah, we'll get into that because you have some data as well. And everyone wants to know about blood tests and risk markers and improving said risk markers in order to prevent any future problem. And we know that heart disease or heart attacks are massively preventable if you control your insulin, your glucose, and your various other key metrics. As Arthur Agenston stated in The Widowmaker, these heart attacks are entirely preventable. Now, maybe not 100%, there's electrical issues too and all, but overwhelmingly. So let's maybe talk about your journey then in terms of blood test improvement and overall health improvement.
Absolutely, because just not quite as obsessed with you, but we're all about the data at the end of the day.
Yep.
And I love your quote. I don't know, I always use your quote as well. There's actually no such thing as a sudden heart attack if you know where to look in the right places. And what I work with, We Love Our Heart, has shown is that there's a woeful lack of information with your typical GP and your typical cardiologist. But back to the data. So I started on a journey of low carb, high fat with yourself, with Eat Rich, Live Long, great book, recommend it to everybody, back in March last year. And I saw immediately, well, immediately means the next blood test, which was 6 to 8 weeks after I started. I saw immediately my HDL had gone up 20%. My trigs were starting to go down. My blood sugar was starting to go down. Even my LP(a), which is the big bad boy with me, was starting to go down. So I was convinced that this was the way forward. And, things have moved on since then. I had a couple of speed bumps in summer that you know about that we don't need to go into now. But let's just say that I went for my last angiogram, most recent angiogram, a couple of weeks ago. And I can't do the CAC scan. I mean, much as I love and recommend people to do the CAC scan for a precise measurement of risk, or as good a measurement of risk as you can get, it's no good for me because I've got too many stents. Yeah, so it doesn't show up. But I did do my last angiogram, my catheter in my arm with my cardiologist, who's fantastic. And for the first time ever, and I've had a few of these, and for the first time ever, he said, Mr. Felstead, plaque stable. We've just cleaned up a little bit, but we saw that was going to happen anyway. But we don't need to do any extra interventions. Everything is good. Everything is clean. There is no further buildup of plaque. And I was like, I don't believe it. He actually said, this is a quickie, Mr. Felstead. I mean, this was like, you're lying there and you just don't know. You're feeling good. I've seen, the whole metrics were getting better, but you just don't know until someone actually goes into your heart, the X-ray screen next to you, and they say, yep, it looks all clean to me so far. And I was like, wow, that is fantastic. And that was literally 2 weeks ago. And I was like, oh, thank you so much.
Excellent. Well, that's a great job. Well done, because you have to put the work in yourself to achieve that, because simply getting the drugs might slightly reduce the risk of a further event, but you have to fix the root causes, as you well know. So in that case, I think the cleaning up you mentioned to me earlier was really around just a stent kind of, sometimes stents after
bit of ablation. But it was something they'd already seen it had to be done. It was actually part of an ongoing thing. There was nothing new there, nothing more than they expected.
And that's exactly what Arthur Agenston in Miami, exactly what he does. He does serial scanning, depending on whether there's stents, and he watches for new plaque. If new plaque is growing, he has to do more. And if new plaque is not growing, he knows the patient is relatively ultra safe. And he's one of the only cardiologists in the world who's really doing that serial checking. And of course, he knows all the low carb, the keto, and he's basically doing everything, we're doing. So you added in, I think, so your bloods were getting better from 18 months ago. Obviously, the first surge when you switched to a healthy real foods diet.
Real quick, by the way, as indeed you predicted, shall we say, that it might?
Yeah, it does. There's a small minority of people who get unusual response, very small, and that's an area of continued research. But overwhelmingly, you get the insulin plummets, HDL up, trigs down, everything goes back to a healthy metabolism, which is super. But then more recently, I think, and this is where my buddy Warren Matthews, who I visited in New Zealand, I've mentioned before, you started using the CX8 product that I somewhat helped him develop. And how is that going for you the last several months?
Exactly right. I've been religiously using it the last 3 to 4 months after, the introduction from you, most probably. And that has really added to the whole, the assurance. And then, I knew I had an issue in December. It was cleaned up, and I knew there was a bit more work to be done. But as I said before, what I didn't know was things going to be growing? Was more plaque going to be in my arteries? How was that? And I definitely think that, the addition of the CX8 over the last 3 months has really helped to stabilize the whole situation with me, to stop the growth in plaque. And I know you and I, and even my group at We Love Our Heart, we're not about the feely good factor. It's not about, do you feel good? Yes, I feel good. I actually feel better today than I can remember for, several years. But it's not about that. It's back down to the data. And yes, I've got an issue with LDL, but we don't want to go about that. My cholesterol LDL is quite high. And yes, I've got an issue with Lp(a), as we've also talked about. It's way above what it should be. But I am seeing now that, my HDL is up in 95 now. My trigs are down to 55. So I've got this whole this HDL trigs ratio of 2, and it used to be a half. So I've managed to 4 times that, actually, upload that ratio, which is, you would say, is a very good marker too. My blood sugars are 5.4, 5.3 now. So that whole sort of pre-diabetes risk that I was maybe encroaching on before, the 5.9 area, 5.7, 5.8, 5.9, which you said is probably generally too high. Pre-diabetes probably means you're diabetic. That's all that has been, the gas pedal's been released there. So the metrics are there. And Ivor, I will add that it's not just me anymore. That you've mentioned before this We Love Our Heart. We've got a little group, we call them the Pioneer Group. And we're seeing it across the board. We're very data driven, and people are reporting positive results in terms of their HDLs, their trigs, and people are even losing weight. And that's not, I'm not at all about losing weight. I'm actually trying to put on weight, but people in the group are actually even losing weight, and they're really happy about that.
Yeah, I almost see, obviously losing weight, funny, people are vain, and losing weight is the big driver, with avoiding health problems kind of secondary if people are truly honest. But the funny thing is, I see the losing weight as a secondary side effect, which is very pleasant. But the key thing is the data, the numbers, and the risk collapse. Your trig over HDL there, you were saying, yeah, you went from actually around 2, which is bad, down to around 1/2, which is excellent. So that's a 4x. And we know from studies, Harvard studies, way back, even in the 90s, where trig over HDL predicted future events with a 20 times risk factor for a very bad ratio, from memory, 19 point something. Whereas looking at LDL, it's a few percent higher risk. It's useless. But trig over or HDL trig ratio, fantastic. I wouldn't worry too much about LPA. I have a blog post I might include that largely the data over 30 years indicates quite powerfully that if your Lp(a) is high, but all your other metrics are good and ratios, it really ceases to really exist as a risk factor. But if your Lpa is high and there's some other metrics off and you have a metabolic problem, it can really indicate high Lpa as a genetic predisposition towards sensitivity or susceptibility. So I view it as a susceptibility factor more than a straight risk factor that's high, like insulin. But in either case, super stuff. So your top game now, basically, at the moment.
And I feel great as well. And I'm putting back on the weight. And one of the other tips you gave was to do, small, short exercises, weightlifting, but to do it to exhaustion, to build up a bit of muscle. Well, I've put on a bit of muscle, and even my wife has started to notice that, oh, Mark, you're getting a bit, you're getting your guns back again now. And she loves, she loves that. So that's a really good tip, actually. And in our little group as well, we've all got 5 exercises we do every day, just body weight exercises to try and put on a bit of strength, put a bit of core strength there, and everybody's loving that as well. And what I want to say, I just wanted to fire a couple of questions back at you, if I may, Ivor, because I did actually take the CX8 to my favorite doctor, shall we speak, who's very open to all this sort of supplement issue. And he went through the ingredients with me, and he had a little issue about omega-7, but he wasn't sure if that in tablet form is perfect. He said, go for the drops. And I wanted to say my vitamin D was always struggling at 25. Now it's got 55 and above. Yeah, and this has been something that I've really worked on for a while now, to get to struggling to get my vitamin D up. And you and I know that vitamin D is also a very good marker for many other systems that are going on in your body, right? Not to mention COVID immunity and so on.
Yeah.
But what are your sorry, just to put you on the spot, what are your recommended doses, for example, for vitamin D, magnesium?
Yeah, I keep it pretty simple here because, the data is important. Absolutely, the numbers are important, but you can go overboard sometimes in getting the exact dosing. So what I say for vitamin D is I stick to a nominal, 4,000 microunits. That's a basic during the winter in Northern Europe top up. And a few thousand, because you can't be too precise in that. But I always say with vitamin D, and what I do is I actually focus on getting sun all summer to the max. Even in Ireland, I watch for when it's going to be nice, and I get it to the max with no burning. Because when you burn, there is risk of other problems. But with no burning, max sun. And then I also have, of course, lamps, kind of UV lamps. So the point is, vitamin D is one thing, but the sun, the UV on your skin causes vitamin D, but multiple other photoproducts, biochemicals, which they haven't even explored. And also it causes nitric oxide generation, vasodilation and arterial health, and drop in blood pressure. So, just do both by all means if you're low on D. But you're absolutely right. It's a marker for dietary problems too, and insulin resistance. So sometimes you can take the supplements, get the sun. It's not really going up. You may have something else to fix in your metabolism, and then it will naturally rise much higher.
Okay, cool. And the other thing, the other thing my doctor said was that you need to supplement with omega-3 as well, because I don't think it's such a big part of the CX8, but they do omega-3 as well. I know that.
Yeah. So Extend Life and Warren, they do omega-3 products. It's just the nature of the formulation. Like there's 8 components in CX8, and you have to make choices. So his scientific panel and himself, and then afterwards me, you've got to make choices. And omega-3 is something that's very easy to take separately as a kind of a dedicated supplement. You can even use cod liver oil. So it's decided to focus on the more technologically interesting.
I have to say, Ivan, my doctor actually loved it. He said, this is great. He went through every ingredient and said, yeah, love it. This is super. And what I'm very excited about, Ivan, is this. I've just ordered the organic meat supplement that they're doing, because, you have to know that, my family will kick me out of the flat if I start. They have a problem with liver, let alone anything that's going to smell a little bit stronger. So I'm really looking forward to be able to get the organic meat supplement as well, so I can take those extra nutrients without stinking the kitchen out, or without being thrown out of the flat.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, no, the Organ Ultra, I'm taking that myself. I got Warren to send me over a bunch of it. But I occasionally do eat the organ meats, but I'm not good at persisting, cooking. They're not too appetizing for many. So yeah, and they can be a bit smelly. My wife sometimes cooks liver in the morning, and you know about it in the pan. So that's great. Yeah. So I'll put a link to the CX8 at the end, and always we stress, that you eat the real food, you do the exercises, like you say, stress to exhaustion, like press ups, lift, squats. That's the best kind of exercise. You do all the natural stuff, you get the sun. But for people who have a problem or a particular concern or want belt and braces, beefing up on some key components in supplement form is always a good idea. And magnesium as well. You mentioned magnesium and I forgot to answer. So I say a few hundred milligrams. I kind of leave it like that of actual magnesium. So some mixtures maybe, there might be 1,000 milligrams, but magnesium is 400 milligrams of that. So you need to dig. But a few hundred milligrams is going to put you way ahead of the average population. There's massive magnesium insufficiency out there, and no one cares.
And I know you always recommend this to take it in the evening or just before you go to sleep, because I actually had a magnesium whoopsie last week where I overdosed at lunchtime, and I knew about it fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's amazing. Literally within an hour or two. I mean, if you take it mid-morning on a mostly empty stomach, an hour or two later, you may be running for the bathroom. It's a powerful laxative effect. Magnesium citrate, especially, I think. But if you take it after a big meal, I did that kind of switch. I'm always doing the switch on, switch off experiments to prove something. You know, you got to switch it off, switch it on. I even went back and did it again morning with an empty stomach to switch on the problem, and it did. And then I went back. So I never have a problem with it now. Full meal, goes in on top of the food, slowly absorbed with fats, everything in the meal. Perfect.
There you go. Well, all I can say is thanks, Ivor. I'm still here. I'm feeling great. And a lot of it is down to the work that you've been doing. And we just love it. And the guys that we love our heart love you as well. So keep up the good work. All I can say.
Thanks so much, Mark. And I really enjoy our conversations with the guys too. So we'll keep doing those. And with a view to, you can never eliminate, heart disease, absolutely. But the people who take the action, who are well informed, do the work, you can close to eliminate, I would say. And that's what we've seen over the last decade with people who are doing the right stuff. An utter paucity of subsequent events. And Arthur Agatston as well basically doesn't see. And William Davis, MD, wheat belly, basically ran out of repeat heart attacks. Just didn't have to deal with those in his patients who followed his advice. So you can do it. Almost everyone can do it. But you got to do the work and you got to be informed.
There you go. All right, Ivor. Fantastic.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
Mark.
you so much.
Cheers, man. See you soon.
See you then
Bye
later,
now.
man. Bye-bye.
Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Mark, and he's certainly doing superbly. He mentioned the CX8 supplement that he's been taking for the past few months. Delighted with it. And I actually helped develop some of that with my buddy Warren in New Zealand. So Warren's been to Ireland and I've been over at his manufacturing plant in New Zealand. And I can assure you it's very tip-top quality and ultra-regulated. But anyway, Warren has extended an offer to me, which I can give out to everyone for those who are interested in following up. I hasten to add that, of course, we'll have all the details in the description box below of all the components, and you can go and source your own, absolutely. Though it will probably be several times as expensive, just by the nature of these things. So, Ivor CX8 is the code to use, and for that you'll get 10% off, and for new customers you'll also get a free bottle of magnesium. Now, existing customers will still get the 10% off, but the magnesium, because of system limitations being worked through, can't really be included. So anyway, that code can be used, Ivor CX8. It gives me a little bit of support to continue to allow me to do the work I'm doing, and also, of course, gives the 10% discount to you. So please do look below in the description box, though, and see all the interviews on all the different components and white papers, etc. And as always, do your own research and trust your own ability to decide what's best for your health. So thank you very much, and great if you can pass this on so that anyone who's interested can avail of the offer and keep everything moving along towards better health. I'll just add one more thing, that delivery at the moment, Warren does offer for $6.50, especially to America, a special courier DHL delivery. And that's because in the current scenario, where it normally takes around a week and a half to go to the US, it can be up to 3 or 4 weeks now because of the current situation. So he subsidizes the courier delivery and keeps it down at a low price of $6.50.